All right, I think we can get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to An Accessible Digital World. Thank you for joining me on my lightning talk, and thank you to DrupalCon for giving me the space to talk to you all briefly on accessibility and the importance of it. My name is Sadia Ali. I'm a software developer at ThinkShout. ThinkShout is a digital agency currently based on the internet. We are a B Corp organization that brings accessibility into modern digital strategy, design, and development. We love making the internet. We love making the internet something that can be used for good, and that can include helping people bring accessibility into their own workflows. I've been working at ThinkShop for almost 3 years now, and when I'm not working, I'm usually either playing board games with my family or coming up with a new recipe to try out. So I'm very passionate about food. I like to think of accessibility like cooking. When you first get started, it can feel overwhelming, but you start with one skill and one recipe, then you add another, and you slowly develop skills and habits through practice and time. Creating digital content is hard. It requires a lot of work with competing priorities, limited budgets, and only so much time to do and learn new things. But you don't have to have all the answers to get started. Small changes make a big difference. So start where you are and aim for progress, not perfection. Coming out of this session, you will not know everything that there is to know, and that is okay. If you're at the microwaving hot dog stage of your accessibility journey, that's totally okay. You are, there is no wrong place to start. All right, let's talk about digital accessibility. Studies show that 25% of people in the United States have a temporary or permanent disability, and this can include no vision, color blindness, hearing loss, speaking or cognitive disabilities, and mobility-related disabilities. The average person will experience some form of disability in their lifetime. So accessibility is not for a small group of people. It's good design, content, and coding practices to better serve everyone. Accessibility is not nice. This is a quote from Kat Holmes, who wrote Mismatch, which is a book about inclusive design. It's not a nice thing to do or a feel-good activity. It's basically taking the time to learn to identify exclusion and then moving towards more inclusive solutions. It's learning how people use it. It's learning how other people use the things we make. By closing the loop between our expectation of what people need and what they actually need, we get better at making things. So accessibility isn't nice, but it is necessary to make better things. Accessibility is inclusive. You want your work to benefit a very broad audience. Sometimes disabilities are permanent, like someone who has lost a limb. Sometimes they're temporary, like a broken wrist. And other times they're situational, like holding a baby, so you only have one hand free. When you have content that works for people who are deaf, it'll also work for someone who's looking at your site and they can't hear because they're in a loud room. Accessibility is inclusive because it considers the diverse bodies and situations of the people engaging with your materials. Also, accessibility is required by law. The Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and it says that places of public accommodation have to be accessible. So for example, streets have curb cuts and buildings have ramps. And in recent years, judges have ruled that the internet is also a place of public accommodation. So the three terms that you should be familiar with are Section 508, which is the federal law that says websites receiving federal funds must be accessible. The Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which says accessibility is a civil right. And the WCAG 2.1 AA, which is the International Accessibility Guidelines. It's referenced by the ADA and the Section 508. Every year for the past 4 years, there have been a record number of organizations that have been sued for accessibility issues. So it's important to make accessibility a priority. So far, you've heard about what accessibility is and why it's important. Now let's talk briefly about how you can connect accessibility with your day-to-day work. How can you bake in accessibility? The brilliant cook, teacher, and author Samin Nosrat taught us that the key to any recipe is salt, fat, acid, and heat. We see the same accessibility issues across every site partners bring to us, and making each of these accessible is a really attainable goal for yourself or your team. For now, I want you to focus on 4 things when it comes to accessibility: headings, links, images, and focus. If you can improve accessibility in these 4 areas, you're going to cover a lot of accessibility issues in your content. And for all 4 of these, start rolling them into your process early. Think about it this way. If you forget to put butter in the batter of a cake, you can't really just put it on at the top at the end, right? Similarly, digital accessibility is simplest when it's planned as part of the process. Let's talk headings. If there is text on your page, there should be proper headings. Every page needs one H1 and a clear heading structure. People don't read all content on the page, and making it scannable helps people find the information they need quickly. Folks using a screen reader can jump to review a list of headings, and if there aren't any, the page just becomes a wall of text to sort through. And those headings should be in code and not just a larger font size. Here are some best practices for links and buttons. You want to make sure your links and buttons have focus and hover states. This means when a user is navigating with their keyboard or their mouse and they come across a link or button, there's a visual cue that lets them know that the element is an interactive element. They should also be large enough to touch, and this is really important for users who are on mobile devices. Unlike buttons, links need to have destination. They should navigate the user to a new page. Links should also be human readable. In this example, a user will run into 6 click to vote links, and it's really hard to tell these links apart because the text is all the same. So in the future, you may want to avoid link text that says things like click here or more or read more. These kind of links can be confusing when a screen reader reads them out of context. A better example for this website would have been like vote for Hallie or vote for Nala. That would have given the user a little bit more context. Next is images. Images should have alt text that is short and meaningful. So think about 100 characters or less. Short is important because once alt text is encountered with a screen reader, the person has to listen to the whole thing. They can't skip over it. Also, context matters. If this image was about selling stickers only, then the gender and race of the person in the photo probably wouldn't be relevant. But since this was a story about the 2020 elections, these kind of details were meaningful for the reader. So use the context to guide what's important to your audience. Also, some images will need more than alt text. An infographic or map, such as the one in the example here, will need a longer text description to explain and summarize the information. This can be done in support text, or the graphic itself can be in an HTML format where the text is accessible. Our last one is focus. Focus is something that has come up a lot recently. Creating content to allow more focus supports people who have autism, learning challenges, brain trauma, and people who are just stressed out and trying to get something done quickly on your site. A 5-course meal doesn't come out all at once piled onto one plate. Each course is given space so the audience can experience it, enjoy it, and focus on it. The approach to creating content, to creating focus with your content is similar. The first thing you want to do is review your design and user experience. Try to create an experience that presents your audience with one step and one next step only to accomplish at a time. Google did this brilliantly when they went from a page full of ads when they first launched to today where they have just one search bar. Look for ways to present the next one action you want the person to take. It might feel sparse, but for your audience, it will feel much more intuitive. The world is a very distracting space, so your content shouldn't be. Also, you might want to limit color and give it consistent meaning. For example, if a submit form button is blue, don't have 5 other blue buttons on the page. And lastly, use consistent design, colors, and layout. Learning where things are on the screen takes time and energy for your users. Being consistent will help them out. Finally, as you roll out any changes to your process, set reasonable short-term goals and ambitious long-term goals. This is a lot to learn and implement. So here's a gentle reminder to be both kind to yourself and ambitious about where your organization needs to go at the same time. There should be some tension there. Get comfortable being uncomfortable and allow that to move you forward. That was a lot of information in 10 minutes. If you would like to connect after this, or if you have any feedbacks, I have added my email and social media details on this slide. I am Sadia, spelled with a 5 on most social media platforms. I've also included the marketing email for ThinkShout. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the conference.